The road to Castlemere climbed like a question no one wanted to answer. Rain traveled with the carriages, soft at first, then steady, until the wheels hissed over wet stone and the lamps threw long, nervous shadows across the cliff. Inside the lead coach sat Evelyn Darcy, hands clasped over a wedding dress chosen for politics, not romance. Every turn showed her the same view, a fortress on the mountain's spine and a future decided without her voice. At the gate, iron lifted with a groan. Courtiers watched from balconies like swallows, under the eaves still pale, alert. The great hall opened ahead, a nave of black stone and candlelight, banners heavy with old victories. No musicians, no laughter. Only the low breath of fire and the soft brush of servants moving with practiced silence. He waited at the far end. King Lucien Valemont did not wear a crown. He didn't need one. He stood beneath a window of dark glass, dressed in midnight cloth that caught the light without surrendering it. His face was beautiful the way winter can be beautiful, clear, exact, and sparing. When his gaze found Evelyn, it did not search for permission or for weakness. It simply measured the truth of her and held it. The ceremony began without fanfare. The steward read the terms of the treaty in an even tone. Grain guaranteed through winter, protection on the borders, settlement of debts owed by House Darcy, and the marriage to be sealed before dawn. The words were tidy. The cost was not. Evelyn answered when she must, steady but pale, hearing her own voice as if from a corridor away. Lucien spoke only once during the vows. "There will be no harm done here," he said, not loudly. Yet every torch wavered as if the castle itself listened. The courtiers shifted. It was an unusual promise for a king who ruled the night. When the last words were spoken, a chamberlain approached with a box cut from crystal as black as ink. Inside, on a bed of velvet, lay a small rose of glass threaded to a fine chain. No jewel, no flourish, just craftsmanship so precise it held its own light. Lucien lifted the chain and stood close enough for Evelyn to feel the cool of it. He fastened it at her nape himself. "Your first gift," he said. Her fingers rose to the rose. It was colder than the room and faintly warm at once, as if it kept two temperatures, hers and his. She expected a statement to follow, some declaration of tradition or possession. None came. Instead, he stepped back and gave her a single, unreadable nod, as if the gift meant more than he would explain in public. Supper was offered and refused. Curtains fell. The hall emptied the way a stage empties after a final line quietly, and with the sense that the real scene had yet to begin. A maid conducted Evelyn through corridors that smelled of wax and rain to a chamber arranged for a queen. A fire set high, linen turned back, a single chair by the window where the mountain wind pressed its hand against the glass. Alone, she stood a moment to steady her breath. The rose rested against her skin, neither cold nor warm now, only present. She looked at the door and pictured the man beyond it. Stories had painted him as hunger in human form. What she had seen was control dangerous in its own way, but not cruel. The latch turned, the door opened. He did not cross the threshold. "Lady Evelyn," he said, voice low and even, "no more is required of you than what you freely give. This house keeps its bargains." It was a strange reassurance for a wedding night, and it eased something she hadn't realized was locked in her chest. She answered with a small, honest nod. The castle exhaled, the rain softened, and the night that would decide a kingdom began not with spectacle, but with a promise spoken clearly enough that even the walls seemed to understand it. Morning came as a pale gray echo, not true light. Castlemere did not welcome dawn. It tolerated it. The servants moved like quiet machinery through the corridors, tending to fires that never truly warmed the air. Somewhere in the distance, a bell marked the hour, its sound absorbed by stone before it could fade. Evelyn woke slowly, unsure whether she had slept at all. The rose of glass rested against her collarbone, cool to the touch, yet pulsing faintly as if aware of her waking. For a moment, she thought she imagined it. Then it flickered again, soft and steady, like the smallest heartbeat. A knock at the door. A maid entered, graceful and cautious, head bowed. "His Majesty requests your presence in the solar at noon," she said. "You are to wear the necklace." Evelyn managed a polite smile. "Does the king command even his gifts?" The maid hesitated. "The gifts command themselves, my lady." When the door closed, Evelyn stood at the window and looked down into the courtyard. Soldiers drilled in silence. Horses stamped mist into the cold. Beyond the walls, the forest spread dark, endless, older than any dynasty. It was beautiful in a way that frightened her, the beauty of things that existed long before human reason. At noon, she followed the maid through the castle's arteries of corridors and stairwells. Each passage had its own sound, some breathing drafts, some the faint rhythm of dripping water, others nothing at all. Castlemere was not dead. It was listening. The solar was a long chamber of glass and shadow. Maps, books, and instruments of study covered the tables. Lucien stood near the window, his back to her, a figure drawn in contrast. The light from outside touched him and dimmed, as if unsure it had the right. "My queen," he said, not turning, "you are restless." Evelyn blinked, surprised. "You read that from my footsteps?" "From your silence. It speaks loudly here." He finally faced her. "The rose suits you." "It feels alive," she admitted. "Should it?" A faint smile touched his mouth. "It binds you to the heart of Castlemere. Every ruler wears one, though yours is the first to answer." "Answer what?" "The call of this place. It knows when someone does not fear it." She wanted to ask if that meant he feared it, but his expression stopped her. Instead, she stepped closer to the window, tracing the view of the forest below. "I've never seen land so vast," she said. "It feels like a world waiting to be remembered." "You may remember more than you wish," he murmured. When she turned, he was studying her, not like a man studies a woman, but like a scholar studies a phenomenon. There was caution in his gaze, and curiosity, and something she couldn't name. "I will not keep you confined," he said finally. "You are free to walk where the sun touches. Beyond that, the castle is not safe for you." Evelyn nodded, though she wondered what safe meant in a house like this. As she left the solar, she noticed the torches along the corridor flare briefly, though no servant passed to tend them. The rose at her neck grew warmer, answering the light. Castlemere was listening again, and she began to realize it wasn't only the king who watched her, it was the entire kingdom. That evening, when she returned to her chamber, she found a single candle lit on the table and a note beneath it, written in a sharp, elegant hand. "The castle learns its guests, as they learn it. Do not fear its attention." There was no signature, yet she knew whose hand had written it. Outside, the wind swept through the towers, carrying the faintest sound like a sigh that might have been the mountain itself. The next morning, the storm had passed, but Castlemere remained wrapped in mist, as if the night refused to leave completely. Evelyn wandered through the gallery halls alone, tracing her fingers along portraits whose painted eyes seemed too awake for oil and pigment. Every ruler of Valemont hung there, same eyes, same stillness, the same distant chill that mirrored the king she had married. At the end of the corridor, she found an open door and the faint scent of wax and cold stone. A chapel, small and forgotten. The air inside felt heavier, like the silence between two words. Candles burned in perfect circles, their flames trembling toward the center. Lucien was there. He knelt before the altar, hands clasped loosely, as if in negotiation with something unseen. She hesitated in the doorway. "I didn't think kings prayed." He turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "I don't pray. I remember." Evelyn stepped inside. "What is this place?" "The oldest room in Castlemere," he said. "Built over the mountain's heart. My ancestors believed it spoke to them." "And you?" "I've learned not to answer voices that promise eternity." She studied him, noticing how the candlelight softened his features. "You sound like a man who regrets his crown." "Regret is for mortals," he replied. "We endure." There was bitterness in that word, though it was carefully hidden behind control. Evelyn approached the altar, curiosity stronger than fear. On it lay a slab of black glass, veined faintly with crimson light, like blood moving through stone. The rose pendant against her skin began to pulse. Lucien's voice was suddenly sharp. "Don't touch it." She froze. "What is it?" "The heart of Castlemere," he said. "The source of what we are. It remembers every oath, every betrayal, every drop of blood that built this kingdom. It's alive." "In a way," he said quietly, "but it has slept for centuries." The glow beneath the glass grew stronger, echoing the light of her pendant. She stepped back, startled. The candles shivered and went out, all at once. Lucien rose, moving to her side with inhuman speed. His hand almost touched her arm but stopped, fingers hovering near the sleeve of her dress. "You feel it, don't you?" Evelyn's breath caught. "It feels like it's calling me." His eyes darkened, not with anger, but something closer to dread. That should not be possible. No human has ever heard it. The silence that followed was heavy, vibrating like the air before thunder. He drew in a steady breath, regaining his composure. "You must leave this room. It will feed on curiosity." When she obeyed, he followed, closing the chapel doors with deliberate care. "If you return here, do so only with me," he said. "The mountain remembers names it does not forgive." Later, alone in her chamber, Evelyn replayed the moment in her mind, the pulse of the stone, the soundless call that had reached her bones. She touched the rose pendant, half expecting it to respond. It didn't glow, but its surface was warm, as if something slept inside, waiting for her to ask the wrong question again. Outside, the mist thickened, and from deep beneath the castle came a slow, measured rhythm that might have been the wind or the heartbeat of something that had finally begun to stir. The castle slept uneasily that night. The storm had left the air thick and restless, and somewhere in the distance, Evelyn could hear the gates creaking in the wind, as though the mountain itself was adjusting to a new rhythm. She hadn't planned to leave her chamber, but sleep refused her. The memory of the chapel, the glow beneath the glass, the way Lucien's voice had trembled for the first time, would not let her rest. She wandered through the corridors barefoot, guided only by the faint hum that always seemed to follow her since the ceremony. It led her to the library, where the scent of parchment and smoke lingered. Dozens of candles burned low, as if someone had been there recently. He was by the window, just as before Lucien, the king of night, framed by pale light from a sky without stars. He didn't turn when she entered, but she felt the tension in him, like a blade hidden in silk. "You shouldn't walk alone here," he said quietly. "I could say the same to you," she replied. He exhaled softly, still looking outside. "You heard it, didn't you? The heart beneath the chapel." Evelyn nodded. "It called my name." His hands tightened behind his back. "That shouldn't be possible. The heart only speaks to the blood of kings." "Then perhaps your kingdom made a mistake when it took mine," she said, surprising herself with her own defiance. Lucien turned. His eyes were colder tonight, but not unkind. "You misunderstand. It's not a curse upon you. It's a curse upon us." He moved closer, the faint light tracing his features, and for the first time she noticed the exhaustion there, the subtle cracks beneath the perfection. "We were given eternity," he said, "but not the ability to create. We do not age, we do not die, but we also do not live. The bloodline you're trying to save," she murmured. "It's fading." He nodded. "Every century we lose something. Memory, warmth. The heart is the last of it. It sleeps to keep us from vanishing completely. And yet," his gaze fell to the rose at her neck. "It woke for you." Evelyn touched the pendant, feeling its faint pulse. "Then perhaps it doesn't want your kind to end. Or perhaps it wants to start again," he said. "And that frightens me more." Silence stretched between them, heavy but not hostile. The fire cracked in the hearth, throwing restless light across the room. Evelyn realized he was not a monster. He was a man built from restraint, one wrong step away from losing control of something far greater than himself. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because you should know what you were married into," he said simply. "And because I see the way you look at the shadows and think they're alive, you are not wrong." He walked past her then, but paused at the door. "Do not return to the chapel alone," he said. "It listens when you breathe." When he left, she sank into a chair near the fire. The warmth felt human, fragile, precious. She looked down at her hand and saw a faint red shimmer where his sleeve had brushed her skin. It faded quickly, but the echo of it stayed. A reminder that even the coldest king still carried a trace of fire inside him. Outside, the storm gathered again, whispering against the windows as if repeating his warning. The mountain remembers. Days passed without storms, but the sky above Castlemere never seemed to clear completely. Clouds lingered like half-formed thoughts, letting in only fragments of sunlight that glowed for moments on the marble floors before fading. Evelyn began to learn the castle's moods, the sigh of its doors when the wind changed, the way torches flickered brighter when she walked past. Castlemere was alive, in its own silent, watchful way. She saw the king more often now. Lucien did not summon her formally. He simply appeared wherever she happened to be by the library, in the gardens of frost-bitten roses, on the terraces where fog spilled over the balustrades. He never interrupted, only watched, as if curious about what kind of mortal dared to find peace inside a house built on secrets. One afternoon, she found him in the abandoned conservatory. Dust hung in beams of light, and the scent of old soil filled the air. The room must have once been magnificent iron arches, wrapped in vines, shattered glass ceilings that still caught the sky. Evelyn brushed her hand over a broken pot and smiled faintly. "You tried to grow roses here," she said. Lucien, standing in the doorway, answered quietly. "They refused to live in shadow. They just needed care," she replied. "Roses are stubborn. They bloom where they're loved." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "And you think love alone revives what's been dead for centuries?" "I think it's the only thing that ever has," she said. A silence followed, softer than the others. He reached out, picked up a fallen petal from the dirt. It turned to dust between his fingers. "You speak as if the world still belongs to you," he murmured. "Doesn't it?" For a heartbeat, he almost smiled. "Perhaps that's why the heart woke. You don't believe in endings." They left the conservatory together. On the steps outside, the wind pulled at her hair. Lucien paused and lifted a strand that had caught on the edge of her collar. His fingers barely brushed her skin, but the air thickened, as though the entire castle was holding still. She could feel his restraint in that moment, the tension of someone who knew too well the weight of a single touch. "I'm not afraid of you," she said quietly. "Then you are unwise," he replied. "Or maybe you're not as dangerous as you pretend." His gaze met hers. "You have no idea what I pretend to be." He turned away before she could answer, cloak catching the wind, and disappeared into the corridor's half-light. That night, Evelyn dreamt of the heart beneath the chapel. She saw its glow spread upward through the castle's roots, through stone and earth and bone, until it reached the chamber where she slept. The light touched her chest, the same place where the rose pendant rested, and she felt it pulse once, twice, then stop. When she awoke, the room smelled faintly of roses. She rose and went to the window. In the courtyard below, Lucien stood alone in the gray dawn, head bowed, as if listening to something she could not hear. He turned slightly, and though she was certain he could not see her, his eyes lifted to her window. For the briefest moment, the distance between them vanished. Then he was gone, swallowed by the corridors of his silent kingdom. The days that followed blurred into pale light and half-quiet evenings. Castlemere began to breathe differently, as if something inside its walls had stirred and was waiting for permission to wake. Servants spoke in whispers. The torches burned lower. Even the air seemed aware of what was coming. That evening, Evelyn received no summons, no escort, only a message written in the same sharp, measured hand as before. Tonight, the king wishes to speak with you in private. The hour of rain. The hour of rain arrived before sunset. The sky cracked open, and water fell in steady sheets against the glass, turning the world outside into a blur of silver. When the door to her chamber opened, she did not startle. Lucien stood there, half shadow, half light. His expression carried neither command nor apology, only resolve. "The castle grows restless," he said. "It listens too closely now." Evelyn's voice was calm, though her heart betrayed her. "What does it want?" He hesitated before answering. "It wants what I was promised, and what I swore I would never take by force." He extended a hand. "Come with me. The heart is awake." They walked together through the corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly downward. The torches flickered out behind them, one by one, until only the glow of her pendant lit the way. The heartbeat she had felt in her dreams pulsed through the stones beneath her feet. The path ended at the chapel door. The same black glass slab waited on the altar, brighter now, veins of red light moving like rivers beneath its surface. Lucien stopped beside it. "This is where the bloodline ends or begins again," he said. Evelyn turned to him. "You said no harm would come to me." "And it won't," he promised. "Not unless you ask it to." "What do you mean?" His gaze lowered to her necklace. "It answers you, not me. It has chosen." The glow from the pendant deepened, filling the room with gold and crimson. The light reached the altar, and the stone responded, trembling like a living thing. Evelyn's breath caught. "Lucien, what is it doing?" "Listening," he said softly, "waiting for your heart to decide what we become." The thunder outside rolled through the mountain, shaking dust from the rafters. She could feel the pull between them, the space shrinking until it was no space at all. The air itself seemed to hum with memory, every word they had spoken, every silence they had shared. He reached out, then stopped, his hand hovering just short of her face. "If I touch you," he whispered, "the heart will see it as consent." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "And if you don't?" "Then it will take from us anyway, without choice." She lifted her chin. "Then let it take what it's already claimed." The words were enough. The moment his hand brushed her skin, the light between them exploded into brilliance. The chapel vanished in color red, gold, and white, like sunrise after centuries of night. The mountain roared. Evelyn felt warmth race through her body, a flood of energy that was neither pain nor pleasure, but something greater than both. For a heartbeat, she thought she might dissolve into it entirely. Then the glow subsided, leaving silence behind. Lucien stood before her, breathing as if he had run for miles. His eyes, once the color of storms, shone faintly amber. "The curse," he whispered. "It's breaking." Evelyn touched her pendant. It no longer pulsed. It was alive now, steady, human. Outside, the rain had stopped. The castle, for the first time in centuries, was utterly still. What had begun as a bargain had become something no vow could contain. And somewhere deep beneath them, the mountain took its first breath of morning. By morning, Castlemere no longer looked asleep. Servants moved in, frightened haste, and the corridors buzzed with voices too low to understand. Word had spread, the heart had awakened. The kingdom's oldest secret, its ancient source of power, was alive again. Evelyn stood by the window of her chamber, watching fog roll across the courtyard. The pendant at her neck glimmered faintly, as if reluctant to rest. Her reflection in the glass seemed unfamiliar, paler, sharper, touched by something not entirely human. A knock shattered her thoughts. A maid entered, trembling. "My lady, the royal council demands your presence. His Majesty is already with them." Evelyn followed, escorted through the narrow hall that led to the throne room. The doors stood open. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of iron and candle smoke. The king sat upon the dais, still and unreadable, while 6 figures in black robes formed a half-circle before him. Their faces were ancient, some carved by time, others untouched by it. The eldest, Lord Vial, rose. "The mountain shakes with power we do not control," he said. "The heart has answered to a mortal. That cannot be permitted." Lucien's reply was calm but cold. "The heart chooses. It does not ask permission." "It cannot choose a human," hissed Lady Corvina, her silver eyes burning. "The covenant forbids it. The union must be completed, the mortal blood offered to seal the awakening." Evelyn stiffened. "Offered?" Corvina's gaze cut to her like a blade. "The heart feeds on life, girl. You woke it. You must sustain it." Before she could speak, Lucien rose from his throne. The sound of the movement alone silenced the room. "No," he said, "there will be no sacrifice. The age of blood is over." Lord Vial's voice deepened, echoing like thunder in the hollow of the hall. "You would defy the laws that built this kingdom? You would let centuries of immortality end because you pity a woman?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "Because I see her. Because she reminds me what it means to live." The torches flickered violently. The heart's pulse reached them, even here, faint but present, vibrating through stone. Evelyn felt it echo through her own chest, answering her heartbeat in perfect rhythm. Vale's eyes narrowed. "You have already bound yourself to her." Lucien said nothing, but silence was confirmation enough. The council erupted. Voices rose in fury, some pleading, others cursing. The noise shook the banners overhead. Evelyn took a step forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You call yourselves immortal, but you're afraid of ending, afraid of change. You curse life because it refuses to bow to you." Corvina turned on her. "You dare speak of life when you have doomed us all?" "Perhaps it is not doom," Evelyn said. "Perhaps it's deliverance." Lucien descended the dais and stood beside her. "The heart does not destroy," he said. "It restores what we forgot, the cost of being alive." The council's eyes burned with rage and disbelief. "Then you choose her over your kind," Vale declared. Lucien met his gaze. "I choose truth over eternity." The oldest of them hissed words that made the candles shudder. "Then you are no longer our king." The council vanished into shadow, their exit marked by a chill wind that swept through the hall and extinguished every light. Lucien turned to Evelyn. "They will not stop," he said. She looked up at him, calm despite the fear, clawing at her ribs. "Then neither will we." He almost smiled. "You are braver than I was when I still believed in gods." Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the mountains. The heart answered with a pulse that shook the floor beneath them. Castlemere was no longer divided between man and monster. It had chosen both. The castle had not known silence in centuries, yet that night it felt utterly still. No torches burned, no servants moved. Even the wind seemed to circle the mountain instead of touching it. Castlemere was waiting, watching for what the king and his queen would decide. Lucien stood at the edge of the balcony. The horizon split between storm and dawn. The first light of morning painted the fog in muted gold. Evelyn found him there, shoulders tense beneath the weight of choices he had spent a lifetime avoiding. "They'll come for you," she said softly. He didn't turn. "They won't need to. The heart will do what they could not. It will demand balance." "What does that mean?" "If we refuse to finish the ritual, the heart will claim us both. If we surrender, it might spare one of us." She moved closer. "You mean me?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "You were never meant to pay for my curse." "I was meant to save it," she countered. "That was the bargain, wasn't it?" He faced her then. His eyes no longer hid the storm inside. "You've already saved it. You reminded it what life feels like. That's why it stirs. That's why I can feel warmth again. That is enough." She shook her head. "If the heart wants something, it won't stop at enough." Lightning cracked far away, painting the mountains white for an instant. The pendant around her neck pulsed faintly in time with the thunder. Lucien stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You could run. Leave before nightfall. The forest will hide you. The magic will not follow beyond its borders." "You'd die," she said. He smiled faintly, without humor. "That would make us even." She stared at him for a long moment, seeing what he wouldn't say, that he was already fading, his strength unraveling with every heartbeat, the heart borrowed. "You can't protect me by disappearing," she whispered. "If one of us dies, the curse survives. If we face it, maybe it ends." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw fear, not of death, but of losing what little humanity he'd regained. "If we face it," he said slowly, "there's no promise of what we become." Evelyn reached out and touched his hand. "Then we'll decide that part ourselves." For a heartbeat, he closed his eyes. When he opened them, something changed, resolve replacing hesitation. "Then come," he said. They descended through the castle's spine, down staircases carved before memory. The air grew warmer, trembling with energy. The chapel waited, its door open, black glass pulsing beneath the altar like a vein of light. The heart of Castlemere was fully awake. Its glow filled the chamber, rhythmic and steady, like breathing. Lucien turned to her one last time. "If it asks for you." "It already has," she said. She stepped forward before he could stop her. The light reached for her like a tide. Her pendant burned hot, melting into her skin. Lucien caught her shoulders, but the glow spread to him as well, binding them in a single column of color that swallowed the room. The mountain groaned, a sound ancient and deep. Evelyn's voice was calm inside the storm. "You told me it feeds on what we give willingly. Then let it take this." The heart responded. The light turned white, so bright it erased every shadow, every fear, every sound. When it dimmed, they were both still standing. The glass beneath the altar had shattered, its veins dark and empty. Lucien looked at his hands, the color returning to them warm, alive. Evelyn's skin glowed faintly in the dawn light, pouring through the chapel's cracks. "What did it take?" she whispered. "Not us," he said. "Just what we used to be." The curse had not demanded blood. It had demanded choice. And together, they had given it one. The storm that had haunted the mountain for centuries finally broke. The clouds split apart, revealing a sky too bright for the kingdom that had forgotten daylight. Castlemere trembled, dust falling from its arches as if the very stone were taking its first breath. Evelyn stood beside Lucien at the center of the chapel's ruin. The altar was gone, replaced by a pool of pale light that faded slowly into the floor. The air smelled of rain and iron. Neither of them spoke. Neither trusted that words could survive in a moment like this. When the silence lifted, Lucien reached for the nearest torch. Its flame burned soft gold, not the blue of vampire fire, but human fire. He looked at it with disbelief. "I can feel the heat," he murmured. For the first time in 400 years. Evelyn watched him. The change was subtle, but undeniable. Color returned to his skin. His breath left faint trails in the cool air. His eyes, once the sharp gray of winter, now caught the warmth of amber. "You're alive," she said. He turned to her slowly. "So are you." From somewhere deep in the castle came a sound 100 voices gasping at once, or perhaps weeping. The court, the awakening had reached them. Lucien closed his eyes, sensing it. "They're changing," he whispered. "The immortality is breaking." The doors of the chapel burst open. The council stumbled in, their faces stricken. Lord Vial fell to his knees, clutching his chest as if startled by the heartbeat returning beneath his ribs. Lady Corvina stood behind him, eyes wide, one hand trembling in the light. "What have you done?" she breathed. Lucien faced them. "What you feared most," he said. "We are mortal again." "You've doomed us," Vial hissed. "Without the heart, time will devour us all." Evelyn stepped forward. "No," she said. "Without the heart, you'll finally learn how to live. Corvina's eyes flashed. And when death comes for you, Queen, will you still call it mercy? Evelyn met her gaze calmly. Yes, because life has meaning only when it can end. Lucien laid a hand on her shoulder, not to restrain her, but in recognition. Then he addressed the room, his voice steady, carrying the authority that had once commanded armies. Our curse was not eternal life. It was eternal fear. The heart demanded that we choose between love and survival. We chose wrong for centuries. Tonight, we chose again. One by one, the council members turned away, uncertain, shaken. They would not follow him now, but they no longer had the power to stand against him. The spell that had bound them to darkness was gone. The torches flared higher. The air warmed. From the windows above, the first true sunlight in generations spilled into the chapel, touching the floor like gold poured from heaven. It spread slowly across the stone, reaching Lucien's feet, then his hands. He flinched at first instinct, but the light did not burn. It lingered, gentle, tracing warmth into his skin. Evelyn smiled faintly. How does it feel? He looked down at their joined hands, both bathed in the same glow. Strange, he said, like forgiveness. Outside, the bells of the city began to ring on their own, one after another, until the mountain was filled with sound. For the first time since its founding, Castlemere stood in daylight. Spring came early to the mountain. Where snow once clung to the cliffs, wildflowers now dared to bloom. The people of Castlemere spoke softly of miracles of light returning, of the king who walked among them without a shadow. Lucien ruled no longer from a throne, but from the courtyard, where he worked beside his people rebuilding the fallen walls. He still moved with quiet grace, though the silence around him was no longer fear, it was peace. Evelyn tended the gardens that had once refused to grow. Under her care, the black roses bloomed again, their petals tinted red by sunlight. The rose pendant hung around her neck, now clear as glass, carrying no magic, only memory. Sometimes, at dawn, Lucien joined her there. They would stand among the flowers, hands brushing as the wind stirred through the vines. "Do you ever miss eternity?" she asked once. He smiled. "No, I never truly lived until it ended." Far below, the river that had frozen for generations ran freely again, its sound carrying through the valley like a heartbeat reborn. And when travelers came to Castlemere, they found a new inscription carved above the gates. The first gift was never power. It was the courage to love in light. The curse was gone. The night had learned how to breathe, and so had they.